What's going on, everyone? Gig Accountant here. My name is Naz. I'm a licensed CPA in the state of New Jersey. I'm also a gig economy worker working on food delivery platforms such as Grubhub, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates. Referral links are down in the description box below if you are interested in signing up to any of those. So this entire conversation regarding independent contractors versus employees has been ongoing for the past few weeks and months due to the state of California seeking to pass out the ABC test legislation regarding independent contractors. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what is exactly transpiring regarding this. What the ABC test is just a method, a process of more clearly defining in a systematic manner what are independent contractors. Currently, the state's definition of an independent contractor may be less defined and may not be as based on a systematic process. It may be following in compliance with the federal standards, and the federal standards is that there is no clear process or model for defining a independent contractor versus an employee. You have to assess the comprehensive picture and make a determination. But for the federal process, there are several factors based on past cases that a employee or independent contractor will be assessed to determine whether or not they are a independent contractor or an employee. These factors include the extent to which the services rendered from an integral part of business, the permanency of the business relationship, the amount of workers' investment in equipment or materials, the nature and degree of control by each party, the workers' opportunities for profit and loss, the degree of independent business organization or operation, and the amount of initiative, creativity, foresight required for the worker to succeed against others in open market competition. So these are the factors that will be considered based on the federal guidelines or federal law, because there is no actual strict guidelines. And these are the factors that will be used to assess whether an employee or independent contractor relationship actually exists. And this is what some of the states follow. They don't have a strict guideline regarding this. And California is attempting to implement a more strict model to assess it, so there's less wiggle room and it's more clearly defined what constitutes a independent contractor relationship. And this is the ABC test. And it's not a test that is completely new. Other states currently have this same exact test deployed in their state statutes, their state laws regarding independent contractors. And New Jersey is one of them, which is the state I am in. And since I am a licensed CPA, I actually recently received a mail from the Department of Labor and Workforce Development regarding the ABC test and independent contractor relationships. And when I first received it, this was the first time I received it. I was a little bit confused as to what this was. I thought that it was referring to my work with Grubhub or something. But then I came to find out that what the letter was distributed, the purpose was to remind licensed CPAs in the state of New Jersey to remind and recommend to their clients that a independent contractor or employee relationship an independent contractor relationship may not be the reality of the situation. It may actually be a employee relationship, and to recommend for my clients, CPA clients, to designate the employees appropriately. So I'm going to read to you guys the letter that I received from the state of New Jersey's Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And here's the letter. Dear licensee, as you know, one of our many responsibilities at the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, NJDOL, is the collection of contributions due from employers to the Unemployment Compensation and State Disability Benefits Funds under NJSA 4321-7. In carrying out this responsibility, we have seen a number of cases where small and medium-sized employers believe that by simply making the decision to report a worker's earnings to the federal government using Form 1099 as opposed to Form W-2, a potential employer may unilaterally deem that individual to be an independent contractor, thereby avoiding the responsibility under NJSA 4321(7) to make contributions respecting that individual to the unemployment compensation and state disability benefit funds. On behalf of the Department of Labor and Division of Consumer Affairs, we are writing to remind you that under NJSA 4321(1) ETSEQ sequential, the New Jersey Unemployment Compensation Law, NJUCL, if a service is performed for remuneration or under any contract of hire, written or oral, expressed or implied, it is considered to be covered employment unless the potential employer is able to establish the following with regard to the service at issue and the individual providing that service. So, A, B, C. A, such individual has been and will continue to be free from control or direction over the performance of such service, both under his contract of service and in fact. And B, such service is either outside the usual course of the business for which such service is performed, or that such service is performed outside of all the places of business of the enterprise for which such service is performed. And C, such individual is customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, profession, or business. Okay, so let's review this. Test A. Such individual has been and will continue to be free from control or direction over the performance of such service, both under his contract of service and in fact. In my mind, it seems clear that gig economy companies often violate this by deploying incentive measures and punishment measures regarding their so-called independent contractors. Some of the punishment measures that can be deployed, that are I see deployed, is that gig economy workers or the independent contractors will have their schedule removed, or they will be prevented from scheduling, or their contact will go ahead and directly engage them to criticize their work. That I feel like is a clear violation that I've seen that has been implemented by some gig economy companies or employers. So let's look at B. Such service is either outside the usual course of business for which such service is performed, or that such service is performed outside of all places of business of the enterprise of which such service is performed. So what this is saying is this a service that is outside the scope of the normal services provided by that company, or is it outside the normal scope of the enterprise? So now, for a rideshare or delivery, the normal scope of business is anywhere where there's roads. So I would say that anyone that works on the roads is not outside the scope of business, but that depends on the definition of this. They may mean, it could also be interpreted to mean outside the scope of the company's headquarters. So, and the next item is C, which is such individual is customarily engaged in independently established trade, occupation, profession, or business. Okay, so what this means is it normal? Is this traditional in that trade, business, or occupation for it to be engaged in a independent contractor type arrangement, relationship? It's normal for certain businesses, certain trades and occupations for this to be a independent contractor relationship, but within rideshare and rideshare taxi services, food delivery, traditionally that has not been a independent contractor relationship. For the record, traditional independent contractor relationships would include doctors, plumbers, CPAs, things of that nature. Okay, so let's continue reading. NJSA 432119 I6. This statutory criteria, commonly referred to as the ABC test, is written in the conjunctive. Therefore, where a punitive employer fails to meet any one of these three criteria listed above with regards to an individual who has performed a service for remuneration, that individual is considered to be an employee, and the service performed is considered to be an employment subject to the requirements of the NJUCL, in particular subject to NJSA 4321-7, which requires an employer to make contributions to the Employment Compensation Fund and State Disability Benefit Fund with respect to its employees. So that's very important. I'm going to read that one section again. Therefore, where a putative employer fails to meet any one of the three criteria listed above with regard to an individual. Okay, so for the ABC test, and if an employer fails any one of those items, A, B, or C, the individual is considered to not be an independent contractor. The independent contractor relationship test failed. The individual is an employee to the employer. And the reason why, and one of the reasons why the states are pushing this is because employers use the independent contractor relationship to get around, circumvent certain taxes that they are required to pay to the state. Taxes include the State Disability Benefits Fund and contributions to the Unemployment Compensation Fund. They're able to circumvent this by executing or making an independent contractor relationship with the employee, with the individual. And in addition to this, the downsides for the individual, there are upsides, but the downsides include that the individual is responsible for the FICA tax 100%, whereas under an employee relationship, the employer is responsible for half of the FICA taxes. So that'd be your Medicare and that'd be your Social Security taxes. So that's something that is negative for the independent contractor. The other thing that the independent contractor may be losing out on is vacation pay, sick pay, other things like that, other benefits that may be available to other employees to the company, but is being the independent contractor is being excluded for these benefits. And let's not get this twisted. A company is not required to pay out vacation time. They're not required to pay out sick time. They're not required to pay out other retirement benefits and medical benefits. And I'm talking about within the United States, since this is where we're located, or where I'm located. A company is not required to give out those type of benefits and forms of compensation. But if they are providing it to some employees and not other employees, that's where it becomes a problem. They need to have a method, a way of differentiating between these type of employees, and a good reason. Otherwise, they may be opening themselves up to lawsuit for that. So let's finish up this letter. As alluded to earlier, in support for independent contractor status, potential employers all too often assert that the individual is engaged in 1099 work, is a 1099 employee, works in a 1099 job, or is paid with a 1099. These assertions come with the related inference that by simply making the decision to report a worker's earnings to the federal government using a particular form, a potential employer may unilaterally deem that individual to be an independent contractor. Again, it is our intention through this letter to remind you in the strongest possible terms that in the that in New Jersey, whether someone is considered an independent contractor as opposed to an employee is governed by the ABC test, not by whether the putative employer is using a Form 1099 to report a worker's earnings to the federal government. We would respectfully request in the new year and beyond that as a professional licensed by the Board of Accountancy under the New Jersey Accountancy Law, NJSA 45 2B 42 ET sequential, the purpose of which is to promote reliability of information that is used for guidance in financial transactions or for accounting or for assessing the financial performance of commercial and non-commercial enterprise. You keep the foregoing in mind as you meet with business clients who are inquiring as to the appropriate classification for their workers, whether as part of an initial business model design, a tax financial evaluation of an existing business, or simply in providing assistance to business clients in filing of quarterly wage and contribution reports. Should you have any questions related to misclassifications, please call the Department of Labor at this number. We thank you for your time and your attention to this important issue. All right, so that is it. So the state of New Jersey does have the ABC law already enacted. California is not the first state. It's not too much of a change. The change is that the state is providing a more clear model to assess and determine whether an individual is in reality a independent contractor or a employee. So I think that a lot of folks think that this entire independent contractor versus employee thing is something new that is being enacted by California, when in fact it is actually not. It's something that is already, something that should be considered based on a range of factors, but is something that is the boundaries of which is really being pushed due to federal law not having a strict guideline or model regarding designation of an independent contractor versus employee relationship. All right, so that's really all that I have to say regarding this matter at this time. Thank you all for listening. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a licensed CPA in the state of New Jersey. I offer accounting services, tax preparation, planning, and consulting services. If you are in need of any of those, please feel free to engage me. My rates are subject to change and at my own discretion, but I currently charge $100 per hour. All right, everyone, that's all I got to say. So, guys, be safe out there, enjoy yourselves, and happy hustling.